Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on MSCA Doctoral Networks for institutions from Australia and New Zealand, brought to you by MSCA Global Project in collaboration with Euraccess Australia and New Zealand. And we are delighted to see strong interest not only from across Australia and New Zealand, but also from participants joining us from 32 other countries worldwide. And this really reflects the global dimension of the Sklodowska-Curie actions and the collaborative nature of the doctoral network. My name is Nishant Sandila, and I'll be moderating today's session. And let me briefly introduce you to our distinguished speakers. Firstly, we are very fortunate that we are joined by Ms. Paula Hokkanen. She is the project officer at European Research Executive Agency, and Paula specializes in doctoral networks program, and she has been involved with it since 2019, contributing to the design and delivery of the doctoral training networks. Paula, many thanks for joining us. It's a pleasure. We are also very pleased to welcome Ms. Francesca Arcara, MSCA Grants Coordinator at RMIT Europe in Barcelona. And Francesca supports RMIT's engagement with Europe and participates in MSCA Doctoral Network co-design for transition. And we'll hear more about this when Francesca explains. Thank you for being with us, Francesca. I'm aware that for both of you, it's very early in Europe. So a big thank you again for joining us and making time for explaining to our audience about the doctoral network. So I think we are done with the ice breaking. And we should start why we are really here, to hear from our experts, and who better than checking with Paula on the nitty-gritties of the doctoral network. So the floor is all yours, Paula. We are all ears.
Thank you very much. Let me first find my slideshow. So good afternoon. My name is Paula Hokkanen. I'm a project officer in the European Research Executive Agency. We're based in Brussels, Belgium, like many of the European Union institutions. My agency, REA, manages EU funding programs for research and innovation, mainly, some others as well, but focuses on research and innovation programs. I'm working since 7 years now for the Doctoral Networks program, which focuses on on supporting careers of the researchers early in their careers. So before they reach the doctoral PhD degree. Today, this is what I'm going to present to you. First, we'll have a quick look on the overall framework from funding framework from European Union to the research and innovation. And then we look into the doctoral networks program. And then we also have a look at what is the participation from Australian and New Zealand institution to the doctoral networks program. So European Union budget functions in a way that it is established for a 7-year period. And the current 7-year period ends now in 2027. In this framework, the research and innovation funding is called Horizon Europe. And the total budget for Horizon Europe framework program is 95.5 billion euros. And you know that Horizon Europe is structured in pillars. So there are 3 pillars, and today we are on the pillar 1, which is on excellent science. It focuses on reinforcing and extending the excellence of the Union's science base. So it means frontier research, researchers' careers, and research infrastructures. In this first pillar, the budget reserved for the 7-year period to the MSCA, Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, it is 6.6 billion euros. And all this is to support researchers' careers in their knowledge, in their skills, and also mobility and training. So this is the Marie Curie actions focus. They are designed to support research careers in advanced training, international mobility, and also in intersectoral collaboration. The work program, which is typically designed for 2 or possibly sometimes 3 years, it defines the funding priorities. It also already gives the eligibility criteria for applying for the funding, and then also it explains what is the application procedure. Of course, all these elements are detailed then in the call for proposals when it's when they are launched. For the doctoral networks, so we have had annual calls for proposals. And then this is the work program 2026-27 funding programs for under the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions. And today we're looking at the doctoral networks, and as we already know, the foreseen budget is just a little below 600 million. The call will open soon, now in the end of May, and the call deadline, the closure date, is then towards the end of November. Then let's look at the doctoral networks program. The aim is to strengthen the European research area. And the way how this is done is to train high-skilled doctoral candidates, invest in research careers so that they become more attractive, enable intersectoral, interdisciplinary, and international mobility. Then we support academic and non-academic or industry collaboration, and also foster the culture of open science, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And as said, MSCA supports research careers and researcher development at all the career stages. Doctoral networks is, let's say, we could think that is the first step in the support. Doctoral networks, they train the doctoral candidate to increase their career opportunities and also the employability, given the intersectoral exposure and interdisciplinary aspects of the program. The outputs include career development plan, which is designed during the project, so during the doctoral training, but then also foresees the career also after the project. Then the doctoral candidates who work in the project, they work in their individual research project, which enables them to then drive towards the doctoral degree. They're trained in transferable skills, in addition to the research-related training that is needed for the doctoral degree. We emphasize the appropriate supervision to the doctoral candidate so that there is support in all stages of the work and of the process. The doctoral candidates will benefit from intersectoral secondments. So if they are working in an academic institution, they typically also will have exposure in the non-academic sector. And then the international mobility is one of the key elements of the program. And what is there for the participating institutions? Basically, they receive resources in form of a doctoral candidate that is funded by the project. Of course, there is the collaboration and the knowledge transfer that is within the project consortium, but then also beyond the consortium member institutions and the people, the researchers that work in the institutions. Sorry. The project also means more capacity for the institution. for the research and innovation. And lastly, the project strengthens and establishes new, can also establish new PhD programs. Then, in a very nutshell, what is a doctoral network project? It is about one consortium with several institutions, can be academic and non-academic. It proposes an overall umbrella research project, which is then umbrella for the interlinked individual PhD research projects. Typically, in a project, you have 10 to 15 individual projects in the doctoral network projects. And of course, all this is for the doctoral candidates who are recruited during the first year of the project. About the consortium, I was saying that it's typically an intersectoral consortium. It is composed of institutions that are legal entities, and they can be from anywhere in the world. I will explain a little bit more on the details later in the presentation. But here in this slide, I want to explain to you the definition of sector. So it's quite blunt in the doctoral networks projects. Here you have the definition of the academic sector, institutions, and whatever is not falling on the academic sector definitions is then non-academic sector institution. So typically the non-academic sector is industry, SMEs, it can be also public sector institutions, NGOs, you name it. What is important in the doctoral networks program? It is that it is a bottom-up scheme. So it means that all the proposed projects, they can be from whichever scientific domain. The call evaluation takes place in 8 scientific panels. At the same time, all the projects are interdisciplinary and intersectoral. So there is this 3 I's principle: interdisciplinary, intersectoral, and also international. The doctoral networks projects, the program, has got 3 implementation types. The doctoral networks, let's say standard version, the type is for doctoral training, typically in academic sector, but it also almost every time also includes exposure to the non-academic, the industry sector for the doctoral candidate. Then we have the industrial doctorates, which means that there is at least half of the fellowship duration that is spent at a non-academic institution. And then the third type is joint doctorates, which is academic collaboration leading to joint or multiple doctoral degree. Even though this is focused on the academic institutions, but it also usually exposes the doctoral candidate to the non-academic sector through secondments or through training activities. So the 1 annual call for proposals that we run for the doctoral network program, it includes all these 3 types. And all these 3 types of projects, they compete within the same scientific panels, which were shown in the previous slide and are also listed here in the bottom left corner. Then a look into what the doctoral network project is about. So a proposed project is typically a 4-year project. This is the, let's say, the standard structure. And within these 4 years, the doctoral candidate is recruited and trained and supervised for a period of 3 years. In doctoral joint doctorate type projects, the duration can be 1 year longer if the consortium wishes to structure the project in that way. During the fellowship of the recruited doctoral candidate, they can spend maximum half of the fellowship in secondments, in secondment host organizations. These secondment hosts can be either other beneficiaries in the consortium, or they can be the associated partners that are part of the consortium. So it means if it's half of the fellowship, so it typically means that it could be up to 1.5 years of the 3-year funding to the researcher that he or she works outside the institution that has recruited them for the doctoral studies. The budget can be, the overall budget to the project can be up to 540 person months. This equals typically 15 doctoral candidates for recruiting them for a 3-year period. I will soon in a later slide explain what does this person month budget and unit cost budget, what does it mean. We first have a look at the types of participants. I have already mentioned beneficiaries and associated partners. These are the two types that we have in the project. So the beneficiaries, basically, they are the ones that sign the grant agreement. So they directly can claim costs to the European Union for the project for their costs. As I mentioned, any country and the beneficiaries, it means that the participation is limited to certain country institutions, with some exceptions. But for the associated partners, they can be legal entities, organizations anywhere from the world. Associated partners, they can participate in the project in implementing project activities, but they do not sign a legal document with the European Union. But typically, they sign an association or collaboration agreement with one or several of the beneficiaries that are signatures of the grant agreement. Given that they don't sign the grant agreement, it also means that they cannot be the recruiting institution of the doctoral candidate, and they cannot claim costs directly to the action. Anyway, what we say that the beneficiaries they are encouraged to share a part of the institutional costs. I'll explain to you the budget and the unit cost briefly later. So the institutional unit contributions that they, when applicable, should be also shared with the associated partners in order to cover some of the costs that come with the participation in the implementation of the project. So then I was explaining about beneficiaries and that beneficiaries are eligible for the direct funding from the Union. Eligible countries, we have categorized them in this slide in 3 different categories. You have the EU member states. Then you have quite some EU non-EU member countries that can participate as beneficiaries, which means that they have associated to the Horizon Europe. Countries can associate to the Horizon Europe as a whole, or then they can participate in one of the pillars. You remember the pillar structure that I showed you in the beginning of the presentation. And then also low and middle income countries, many of them are directly eligible to be beneficiaries and receive directly funding. For Australia and New Zealand, what I find interesting is the possibility to be in a consortium as a beneficiary in an exceptional manner. when the participant and the participation is essential to the project. So this means that the participant, the institution, they have unique expertise to the project that kind of justifies the exceptional participation. Maybe they have access to some very specific knowledge, research infrastructure that they would offer to the project. And also, of course, geographical environment or involvement in emerging markets. Maybe there's some specific data that they would provide to the use of the doctoral candidates. So they are exceptional circumstances when a project can have beneficiaries from let's say, high-income third countries. These, in order when applying, this needs to be explained. What is the specific value, and then during the evaluation, it will be the evaluators who will assess that is this exceptional funding is grounded. I have listed here some possible roles for associated partners, which is something that Australian and New Zealand institutions can participate without limits to the projects. So I would say lectures, secondments, supervision. These are some of the typical roles and tasks that I saw from the projects. But it can be, as mentioned earlier on, that it can be some specific expertise that they share with the project and the consortium. Maybe some data sets that are interesting for the research objective. This slide summarizes what I was saying before about the eligible participants to the funding. And then I have a summary about on the doctoral network projects. So we have the three types. We have the doctoral standard networks, industrial doctorates, and joint doctorates. And let's say the key elements are the project duration, which is 4 years, even 5 years for the joint doctorates. During the project duration, there would be a doctoral candidate that could be recruited, employed during maximum of 36 months, or in joint doctorate, 48 months. The secondment duration is limited in standard doctoral networks for half of the fellowship, but for the industrial doctorates and joint doctorates, this limitation does not apply. And then there is the obligation that the doctoral candidate must be enrolled in a PhD program. So then let's have a look at the funding mechanism, the unit cost mechanism, which I mentioned. So the project budget is based on units, and 1 unit means that it is 1 eligible doctoral candidate that works 1 month in the project, and that means 1 unit. And this is 1 unit. So basically the 1 unit includes contributions to the employment costs for the doctoral candidate, for the recruited researcher. And then there is the unit contributions for the institution. The institutional unit costs are divided into research, training, and networking costs for relating to the doctoral candidate that they are recruiting and hosting. And then the costs, contribution to the costs for management and indirect costs. This institutional contribution is managed by the consortium. And as I mentioned earlier on, there is some flexibility how this unit cost unit is used. And we recommend that there is an arrangement between associated partners who contribute to the project, so that these contributions, the institutional unit contributions, also cover some of the costs of the associated partners in their participation to the project. Typically, all these all these financial aspects are agreed in a consortium agreement, which is an internal document to the project consortium, where they basically set the rules, how they will manage the project, how will they implement the doctoral networks project in the consortium that they have put together. And then the last part of my presentation is about participation. So the 2026 Doctoral Networks call information, it is already available. All the calls are published in the EU Funding and Tenders portal. You have a web link here, and of course you can easily find it also from the internet. The Doctoral Networks call will open on 28th of May, and that's when the application and proposal submission function is activated, but basically all the documentation and the templates are already available to view in the Funding and Tenders portal. As mentioned before, Doctoral Networks program, the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions are financed from the Pillar 1 of the Horizon Europe framework program. And currently neither New Zealand nor Australia are associated to this, this pillar. So this means that there is no automatic possibility to benefit from the direct funding as a beneficiary. But as I mentioned, there are all these possibilities to become involved in these projects as associated partners. So as I mentioned here, in practice, how can you get involved? It's basically collaboration with the institutions, with the researchers that you know from before. You can join in the designing phase of the project when the consortium is being put together and the proposal is being drafted and then submitted as proposal to the call. To join a running project, it is also possible to join as a new associated partner. So it means that if you already have collaboration and in your sector with the institution, with people that run doctoral networks project, this could be a way for you to get familiar and get into the doctoral networks project implementation. Another way is and can complement to the already known network that you have, already established network. There is in the call page, there is something that is called partner search. And in this partner search tool, you can advertise your expertise, your institution's possibilities, what could be your role and what would you like to work on in a doctoral networks call. And this is a possibility for the consortium that are looking for members to their consortium, that they can look if specialization and expertise that they want to have in their consortium, if institutions are available, and that's how they can compose the consortium with institutions that they already know from before, but also involve then new institutions to the network. Then briefly, a little bit of the statistics. These statistics is only related to the Horizon Europe framework program. So it is from the year 21 onwards. And these statistics do not yet show the involvement on the call 25, because we are currently preparing the grant agreements and signing the grant agreement. So this is the statistics of the participation in the previous years. As Nishin was mentioning earlier, we have different numbers. We have institutions, then we have separate projects, and then participations. And as you see here for the Australia, there are more participations than projects, which means that some institutions have been actually have become members of a project consortium in several projects. And during the Horizon Europe period, I did not see that there had been a participation as a beneficiary, but in the previous framework program Horizon 2020, there were some projects where the institutions actually had been granted funding and were functioning as beneficiaries in the consortium. Then totally outside from the doctoral networks program, this is a generic possibility for any of you working or in research. We are all the time looking for experts, individuals who can work with us in the research funding and research and innovation funding programs. The work would be working as a scientific evaluator for the proposals in our course. Also, we often use scientific experts in project monitoring when we're reviewing the project progress, and then also there can be ad hoc assignments. So if you're interested, do not hesitate to register your details in our expert database. And this is also, of course, a way of knowing doctoral networks programs, program and projects, but or in a larger way, the EU research and innovation funding programs. And then some resources. As I mentioned, the call will open soon for 2026. We will organize a call information day. This is 3rd of June. So if you now got inspired and you feel like doctoral networks would be an interesting program for you to participate, do not hesitate to connect to the call info day to get all the details of really the small details about the program, and also then what are we looking for, and it will also explain to you the evaluation process and the evaluation criteria in detail, which of course then helps in designing the project. This year, the speciality is that we have a second call at the same time, which is called RACE DN, RACE Doctoral Networks. And this RACE specializes in resource for AI science in Europe. Basically, both the RACE DN and the Doctoral Networks program will be explained during the call information day. And then I have added here in the last slide web links to lots of resources. In several countries, we have the national contact points. Of course, in Australia and in New Zealand, you also have the contacts, but it might be that there is not a specialized contact for Marie Curie actions. You certainly also then can address us directly, or the MSCA global mission can be helped to you. Also, to just follow what's going on, don't hesitate to follow us in all the social media channels. Thank you very much for your attention. And as I understood from Nishant, we will not take questions now immediately, but then there is a dedicated session later in the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. I think you touched upon several of the important points, and I think for those who are joining us for the first time on Doctoral Network session in itself is the first time we're organizing this. It's because we want to see a increased number of participation from Australia and New Zealand in the Doctoral Network program. Of course, there has been, as you said, on Horizon 2020, there were beneficiaries, but in Horizon Europe, there were no beneficiaries. Of course, a lot of associated partners, but it's an indication that with being associated partner, you still see a lot of benefits. That's why people associate to the doctoral network. But of course, there is also exceptional funding that might be used, and you might want to put forward a doctoral network as a beneficiary, which is a possibility. And you rightly pointed out that there are existing doctoral networks which you can join as an associated partner. I think these are very critical, important points that you have very well highlighted, and I'm sure that the audience have been putting questions on the Q&A. I'd suggest that you keep writing your questions. We can come back and take your questions after Francesca will explain RMIT's involvement with doctoral networks. So I think it's a perfect segue to go to Francesca. Francesca, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. So I will tell me if I'm sharing. Can you see my screen? Perfect. Now the banner should go away. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Francesca Arcara. Just a very quick introduction about myself. I currently work at RMIT Europe, which is an office that the RMIT University based in Melbourne has opened more than 10 years ago in Europe. Specifically, we are based in Barcelona, Spain. I've been working for more than 20 years in EU grants, the management of European grants. Specifically, I worked also many years ago, 1 year at the Commission at the time they were called Research and Training Networks, which was the old name of the doctoral networks. So today I'm here just to tell you about our experience as partners. We are partner in a doctoral network that is currently running, that has been funded in 2024. The name is Co-Design for Transition, Sustainable Transition to Democratic Design. We have 13 doctoral candidates, so not the usual 15, which is, as Paula was saying, the maximum is more common, but the network decided to hire 13, of which 10 is a bit of a specific case, a sort of exception, are funded by the EU grant, but there are 3 that for internal decision of the partner are funded nationally. There are 7 universities participating from 7 countries, but we have 15 on top of the beneficiaries. We have 15 associated partners, and I will explain a bit more about that. So if you look on the box, the beneficiary name, you see we have like Politecnico di Milano, the coordinator, Aalborg University, a Polish university, Amsterdam, Southern Denmark, and RMIT Europe, which is where I am based. But then we have a series of additional academic partners, but we have 2 that are more important than others, because these are the ones that are recruiting with their own funding, namely the University of the Arts London and a Hungarian university. Just a quick parenthesis, this is also show you how political events can interfere even with research and research funding. At the time of the application, the UK was not yet part of, again, participating in Horizon Europe for Pillar 1, but they were on the point of signing the agreement. Only the agreement was signed after that the network was funded. So at the very last minute, University of the Arts London, that was expected to be coordinator, had to find somebody else to coordinate. And however, they luckily had sufficient internal funding that they could remain within the network as associated partner. And similarly, for different reasons, for the Hungarian university at the time, Hungary was not allowed to participate in specific EU grants for internal political reasons that you might be aware of. So In the end, we have, as I said, 13 doctoral candidates, 13 PhD students. If each of them has a fellowship, a duration of 36 months of duration. This fellowship, the PhD of these doctoral candidates, include also 2 different secondment of different periods, 3 months and 6 months, in other institutions, in order to guarantee something that Paula mentioned before, this intersectoriality, to expose the doctoral candidate both to the more traditional academic environment where you usually do the research, but also to the non-academic, working for a few months in private companies or in civil society organization, city council, depending on the topic they are involved with. Concretely, these are some of the activities that we are implementing in the network. We have an integrated approach, which I think is pretty important. My impression is that this is what is searched by the Commission, so that is not just a series of parallel PhD running together with maybe once per year a common, say, workshop or event, but really the creation of a sort of integrated training program that provides similar tools and expertise to all the PhD. On the other hand, each PhD obviously is hired, each doctoral candidate is hired within their own university and their own institution. So obviously they also receive their own specific training and in research by the institution. But as you see, we have really core components that are represented by a series of very specific actions that are defined in the career development plan. Every doctoral candidate has to define a career development plan at the beginning of their training, where they define the objectives, the kind of tools that they want to have to exploit, or the activities or the help that they need. And an important component, as I said, is these 2 different secondments with non-academic or with international partner. And I say it's important because it's specifically relevant for this type of seminar with you, with Australia and New Zealand, because that's where there is an opening for a participation for countries outside Europe. What are the activities in which associated partners may participate? As we said, they are hosting secondment, meaning the fellow can spend a certain number of months at your premises, working under the supervision of a principal investigator in Australia or in New Zealand. The institution can participate to provide training activities, either specific session during some workshops that now can be also given online, or other type of training that you deem useful. And as I said, the most important for us, the most relevant, is the creation of co-tutel collaboration, meaning a co-supervision of a PhD. So we implemented programs in which the PhD students can benefit of, at the end of their doctoral studies, getting a diploma title from the European university in which they are enrolled with, and in our case, our MIT University, the Australian university, in which they are also co-enrolled. So basically, at the end, they receive a double title, which is, of course, very interesting for the PhD students, and is very useful for our researcher, because then they can co-supervise together with some other European supervisor, and this opens a lot of possibility of future collaboration toward other types of research projects. Yeah, and then I had some example of what can be the training activities that are being implemented by the network. So this is specifically for our network, which is about sort of enabling the democratic participation for achieving climate transition. And this goes about design practice and social sciences mainly, but toward the implementation, toward achieving goals that are going toward climate transition, addressing, of course, climate change. So as you can see, also the topic is in a way interdisciplinary, even if in the end, when you do the application, you have to apply to a specific panel. I see somebody asked, there is no specific panel for humanities. Well, there is social science and humanities, so is involved into this panel. But it's true that usually it's more social science than purely humanities, also because you need to have some interdisciplinary approach. This facilitate also the intersectoriality aspect. In terms of talking to you about the network, that's all I wanted to say, and this is my contact in case you want to stay in touch. But just wanted to say 2 words more, if I have time, Nishant, about the co-tutel or co-supervision of PhD students. We found that this is a very useful tool, and it's interesting because it also is beneficial for both parties and is beneficial for the PhD students. I just wanted to warn you, however, that this has a series of additional elements that need to be taken into account, because in order to be validated at national level, a double PhD needs to respect different requirements, and they might be different from country to country. So just to give you an example, the Spanish government, the Spanish Ministry of Education, says that for this to be valid, the PhD student need to be spent at least 6 months, not less than 6 months, in the country of the other institution, in the premises of the other institution. However, if you stay for more than 6 months away from Spain, you lose, if you're not Spanish citizens, you lose your fiscal residency. So when you come back, you have to apply again to a visa, etc., etc. So you have to balance all these elements, be aware of that, collaborate a lot with your academic services and with the support services of the institution in order to be aware of all these elements before you start that. Otherwise, other issue are the visa. They might require long time depending from the country, depending on the institution. So don't start at the last minute, because sometime for doing a secondment of 6 months, you might need another 6 months before you obtain the visa to go to the country. So all these things require time and require support, and so but they are feasible and they are beneficial, and then once you can do that, then you can benefit of additional network. So
thank you very much. No, I think we really valued your experience sharing, and also on what needs to be taken into account when you are embarking on this, because of course this is a resource intensive ordeal that you will have to go through. I think thank you very much also to the audience for asking some very, very interesting questions. I think we really understood that your interest is there with the doctoral network. There are possibilities for institutions from Australia and New Zealand to be beneficiary if you so essentiality. If not, then of course you can always participate as associated partners and be involved in secondments, and this is what RMIT has been also doing, and Francesca explained this very well to all of us. With that, please join me in thanking our 2 amazing speakers, Paula and Francesca, for their valuable insights and for taking out time from their schedule to be with us today. I'm confident that the audience has gained a lot of practical guidance and a clear understanding of how to position their institution for the MSCA Doctoral Network. I'm closing.
I would still like to mention that if you got interested, don't hesitate to just link into the call info day. The web link is included in my presentation. No prior registration required. You just join the session. Thank you very much for your attention.
That was also one of the questions. So perfect segue there, Paula. Very, very well done. So you will receive the slides and the recording tomorrow morning to your email addresses with which you have registered. As you exit the webinar, a short survey with 3 questions will appear, maybe 10 seconds of your time. We would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to complete it. Your feedback is very helpful for us for future activities so that we can better support institutions from Australia, New Zealand, and from wherever you have joined us. This brings us to the end of today's session, and thank you once again for joining us. Wishing you all a productive week ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.